Welcome, Misfits family, back here to episode 3 of the Reynolds Sports Report. And man, oh man, do the Pacers do it again. It's almost becoming a routine with this team. It truly is a routine with this team at this point. I mean, the Indiana Pacers stun not just the Thunder, but the NBA world. And they do it in typical Pacers fashion like they've been doing all postseason long. Tyrese Haliburton hits a go-ahead shot with 0.3 seconds left in the game to not only give the Pacers the eventual win, but their first lead of the game with 0.3 seconds. Tyrese Haliburton finishes with 14 points and 6 assists. It was truly one of those games that you think to yourself and say, did that really just happen? Did we really just witness? Did we just witness that? And I think every Thunder fan in the arena, I think every Thunder, player, like I said, the NBA world was shocked today. I was shocked today, right? I was completely shocked. I thought the Thunder were going to come out, throw the first punch, and that's what they did. And I think that's what made this game probably the most shocking out of any comeback victory that we've seen from the Indiana Pacers thus far this postseason is in the fashion they did it. We're talking about a team and the Indiana Pacers that lost the turnover, that were minus 18 in the turnover battle. They were minus 18 in the turnover battle, and they were trailing by 15 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, if you were to tell anybody those statistics right there, you would think, oh, okay, that team got blown out. But then yet again, it is the Indiana Pacers that we are talking about. And so I sit here just still in shock that we witnessed this happen in game one. But obviously Tyrese Haliburton has been doing it all postseason long. I have to pull up this stat because when I saw this stat, I truly realized that Tyrese Haliburton he's been elite, but he is entering elite company now. So here are the 3 players with the most go-ahead or game-time field goals in the final 5 seconds of fourth quarter or overtime since the 1997 playoffs. Number 1, LeBron James with 8 go-ahead field goals or game time. Reggie Miller with 5. And joining him is Tyrese Haliburton. And 3 of those have come in this postseason alone. Tyrese Haliburton has just, and here's the thing. I think this game hurts the most if you are the Thunder because this was the one that you should have won. Like, I understand, like we said, like the Thunder, like the Pacers have routinely been able to come back, but this was the game that the Thunder should have won. There are no excuses if you are the Oklahoma City Thunder right now. There are absolutely no excuses, okay? The Pacers were playing terrible basketball. They had 19 turnovers at halftime. And they were also trailing by 12 points. This is a game that I look at and say, the Thunder, they completely blew this one. Yes, the Pacers came back and they had a great comeback, but this is on the Thunder. And I thought what was most devastating about this Thunder team and their performance today was not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, was not Alex Caruso. Jalen Williams had a good game. Lou Dort had a good game. But it was the fact that they let the Pacers stay in this game. I mean, the Thunder for pretty much most of this game, and even in the fourth quarter, had a kind of an 8 to 9 point window, right? They'd let the Thunder kind of roll back, make it 4 or 5 point differential, and then they'd go hit 2 threes and then make it back to a double-digit lead. But you never felt, and you could even hear Mike Breen and Richard Jefferson and Doris Burke even talking about, like, you could never feel that the Pacers were truly out of it just because the Thunder let them hang around. And this is the team, guys, you guys know it better than anyone, and I appreciate for all of you tapping in right now, but for everyone listening and anyone that has watched the NBA playoffs, you know that this is the team that you cannot allow hanging around. And the Thunder, they did not take the air out of this game when there were multiple opportunities. You're up 15 points in the fourth quarter. That is your opportunity to put this game away. Go on another run. Make it a 25-point game. Make sure they put in their reserves by the 5-minute mark. But the Thunder, they just let around. They sat back and said, we're going to get our own, but we're going to kind of make this an interesting game. And look what happened. You cost yourself game 1 of the NBA Finals. And so I talked about it on Monday because I got out a few of my keys to this game. And the thing that I mentioned the most was the Pacers need to win those bench minutes, right? Like they need to come into this game. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton, Siakam, Nesmith, Turner, like they need to play their A game, and they do. And they need to even play better. That's like the other thing. Like, I mean, the Pacers did not even play good basketball, guys. Like, they didn't even play good basketball. And they still won. But the thing that I mentioned on Monday was the Pacers need to win the bench minutes, right? Like, they need to produce on the bench. These are two of the best benches in the regular season and in the postseason. And the Pacers did that today. They outscored the Thunder bench 39-28. And when you look down across the minutes, you had 3 guys with the Pacers that played 15 minutes plus. And all 3 of those players gave you a productive time when they were on the court. They gave you a productive time. I mean, Obi Toppin, for Christ's sake. He was hitting threes like he was prime Steph Curry out there. And this was a guy that I need to remind you had about 5 turnovers by himself in the beginning of that game. I mean, it looked like Obi Toppin was a deer in headlights, but he came out and started banging threes. That is the type of team that this Indiana Pacers has been. They are resilient. They never give up. And that's all you can ask for if you're Rick Carlisle. That's all you can ask for. A team that is, whether they are on one last leg or even one last limb, this team is going to give it their all. And simply they did it tonight. And that is why they are where they are right now, 1-0 in the series. So they'll be back for game 2. Game 2 will be on Sunday, 5 o'clock. And OKC is going to have to come out and throw a first punch. They're going to, but it's not going to have to be a first punch. It's going to have to be 1,000 punches. They're going to have to beat these guys down so bad that when they get their flight back to Indiana, they're like, let's just forget about that game. Because that's what they're going to need. I mean, like I reiterated, the Pacers played a terrible game in the first half. The Pacers looked like they weren't there to win basketball. And the Thunder still let them hang around. And that was the biggest problem. Am I saying that this series is over by any means? Hell no. The Thunder were the best team in the regular season and have been the best team in the playoffs for a reason. So I'm not going to overreact by game 1, but this is going to be a tough game to swallow. No doubt about it. It's going to be a tough game to swallow if you are the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we'll see what happens Sunday. I assume, and my guess is the Thunder are going to come out and throw some heavy punches. So Indiana, be ready. I know they'll be ready because this is a team that has always been ready for the moment, but OKC's got to come out with another gear even. They've just got to come out and throw. They got to be Mike Tyson in his prime. So I appreciate y'all tuning in right now. I know it's a little late to get an episode started here. It's about 10:18 on the West Coast. So I appreciate you joining in. And also, of course, if you're tuning in post-recording, I always appreciate that. Remember, this is The Misfits. I am your host, Jude Reynolds Ocanas. But let's get to something else. And I really want to talk about this one because I love my winner circle starting 5. It's something that I've been bringing on to this show recently, and I'm going to keep the trend and start it early this episode because there is a bunch of guys that need shout outs of what they've been doing in the past week. So if you're not familiar with what the winner circle starting 5 is, when your name is called, you delivered. So today, here is your starting 5 for this week's winner circle. And I'm going to start with the NHL because, there's also a Stanley Cup going on. The NBA Finals is not the only big series going on right now. The Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers are going at it. And in fact, they had a crazy game as well. And the guy that sealed the deal for them was Leon Draisaitl. the center for Edmonton Oilers, scored the game winner with 31 seconds left in extra time of game one in the Stanley Cup final. Guys, this was, I mean, it was almost similar to what we saw with Tyrese Haliburton hitting the go-ahead shot, right? I mean, this guy, they had basically battled for 19 minutes and 29 seconds. Edmonton and the Florida Panthers were going back and forth, back and forth. I mean, no one could give up any sort of air. And I have to say, it was a thing of beauty. Connor McDavid laid it off right there, right in front of the goalie, Leon Draisaitl. Whacked that one in, gave them the 4-3 win. They got game 2 tomorrow. Now let's go to the greens. I don't really talk about golf a lot on here, but I got to shout out 17-year-old Mason Howell. He is headed to the U.S. Open after what was a jaw-dropping performance. All right. The Georgia native hit 18 under on 36 holes at the Piedmont Driving Club in Atlanta to qualify for his first ever pro tournament. Now, Howell was ranked as just the 496th golfer among amateurs. And yet he still outplayed the likes of 2007 Masters winner Zach Johnson. By the way, the U.S. Open begins June 12th in Plum, Pennsylvania. But shout out Mason Howell. I love to see the new generation coming up, proving their worth against the best of the best. And Mason Howell, you're going to your first ever pro tournament, and that one is a U.S. Open. So that's going to be sweet. We'll be sure to keep up with what Mason Howell does. Now at number 3. Now, this is a little late, but I still have to touch on it, even though France and Spain did play earlier today. And I don't really want to get into that because, España, vamos. But we're not going to talk about that tonight. But Désiré Doué, if you don't know the name, start learning. All right. The 19-year-old PSG winner is the next big thing out of France. I could promise you that. He has a play style like Neymar. He's shifty on the ball, and he's gonna make you dance. But in the biggest stage of the Champions League final, Doué not only toyed, but he danced around Inter Milan defenders all day, scoring 2 goals. And also providing an assist. And here's the thing. He not only became the youngest Champions League final man of the match winner, but he delivered PSG their first ever Champions League title. And as they say in French, la photo. If I'm saying that correctly, I apologize if my French is bad. I took Spanish in high school. Don't blame me. Now, this one, and I really don't mean to point fun at them, but this is not a team. This is actually a player. In fact, and I'm sorry, this is not a player. This is a team. In fact, I'm sorry about that. The Colorado Rockies. If you follow baseball or you follow any sports, you would know that the vibes in the Mile High City have been anything but high with the Rockies team this year. Okay. They were once competing for playoff spots and contending for championships. But now they find themselves in the cellar this season, okay? But over the weekend, and this is why they are in the winner's circle this week. This is why they're in the starting 5. But over the weekend, the Rockies erased a record 22 consecutive series losses and swept the Marlins for their first ever 3-game sweep since May 2024. Folks, that has been over a year since the Colorado Rockies have swept in a series. I mean, there are children born that didn't know that the Rockies could win a series. So, is it enough to turn around the season? Probably not. Probably not. But even in the dark days, you like to see that the players are still fighting. Now, coming in at number 5. It was, look, before this episode, before game 1 was going on, I was fully prepared. To give you Lamine Yamal, who scored 2 goals in the Nations League semifinal versus France in a all-time classic in a 5-4 showdown. But this is now his second time appearing on the starting 5, and that is Mr. Tyrese Haliburton. I don't think I need to say much more. Tyrese Halliburton, look, the stat line wasn't there, but when his team needed him, boy, did he deliver. And on the biggest stage, in fact. Look, the Indiana Pacers are chasing a championship right now, and there's no reason that he should not be on this list. So Tyrese Halliburton, for a second straight time, you are on the Winner's Circle Starting Five, and that has been the Winner's Circle Starting Five presented by the Reynolds Sports Report. And I appreciate you guys joining. But let's move on, and let's still talk NBA, because the NBA has been in the headlines, not just because of Game 1. Obviously, the NBA Finals is big, and we all want to talk about the NBA Finals. And so, I mean, I'm obviously going to, make my comments. But, and I appreciate Ben Papp in right now, the live chat. He said, Shy 38-point masterclass wasted, 100% wasted. I mean, I mean, you said it best. It was completely wasted. He did nothing wrong. I mean, he played great on both sides, great on defense, great on all time on offense, but unfortunately was not able to get that one done. So appreciate you, Ben, for tuning in tonight. And once again, I said, I appreciate you guys joining into the Reynolds Sports Report here on Tha Misfits. I go live Monday and Thursday, and then we have our obviously collaborative show on Sunday night where we talk everything. I mean, last week we were giving us our top 5 LA rappers, and I was getting educated by the Elam and the PG. But moving on, like I said, staying in the NBA world, we got to talk about the New York Knicks, man. We got to talk about the New York Knicks. Because if it wasn't for Tyrese Halliburton, this might have been the most shocking thing to come out of the NBA this week. The Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau after 5 seasons. In those 5 seasons, they went to 4 playoffs, made their first conference finals appearance in 25 years. And also in 2021, Coach Thibodeau won his second Coach of the Year. Now, I have quite a few Knicks fans, and it is fair to say that all of them were very surprised. And if that, some of them were pretty mad. And for a rightful reason. I mean, this was a guy that, I'll remind you, took them to the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. From my perspective, I think Leon Rose and the front office got cold. They got cold feet, right? Like they were like, we got to make some sort of change, right? We were almost there. We got to make some sort of change. Relax, patience, my young Padawan. But seriously, patience is what we needed from the Knicks, because this seems crazy to fire your head coach. And granted, I get it. There's and it's fun. Obviously, when the news broke, I did the reaction video and I said, I can understand why they did, because obviously the issues with not utilizing the bench and really outworking his starters to the point that some of them got injured, and then almost to a point of them getting injured. So I understand it, right? Like I can understand the reason that they probably fired him, but at the same time, need I remind the Knicks and everyone that they were 2 games away from the NBA Finals, 2 games, and I don't really know if getting a new coach is going to really change, those 2 games. Sure, probably should have used the bench more, but this is what I'll say to that whole bench debate. And trust me, I'm certainly on the side that Tom Thibodeau, I said it on the podcast a few weeks ago, they need to use they need to use the bench more. I'm not questioning that at all. So I do understand, but truly the bench really didn't give him anything. I mean, Deuce McBride was fun. Right? Deuce McBride was fun. He went on the court. They always said Deuce, right? Every time he shot a 3-pointer. So it was fun. But when I truly think about what was the production you were getting on the bench, it was lackluster. Honestly, it was lackluster. And so, like I said, I think they got cold feet. And I think this is a personal issue. I think what the Knicks are missing was truly a spot-up shooter, right? You had Jalen Brunson on ball, could do it all. You had Karl-Anthony Towns, who, as much as I love him, was a liability on defense. Mikal Bridges was at times a liability on defense. OG Anunoby he could give you some threes, but was it a consistent when you needed it the most to hit down a 3-point shot? Couldn't really get it from him. look, a guy like Dante DiVincenzo, and I know they had him last year and they only made it to the conference semifinals, but a guy like that where you could truly have a reliable catch-up shooter and it's not a guy that is outworked. Certainly it would help if a guy coming off the bench was going to do that. But I don't want to spend too much time on Thibodeau himself because what's done is done. The deed is done, right? And so who is going to replace Tom Thibodeau? So here are my three candidates to do it. And, it's the usual suspects, but rightfully so, because if the Knicks are going to hire someone, it has to be someone who, one, has a good chunk of playoff experience, right? Like this team, it's not like the Knicks are needing a coach to really put them into contention. This team's contending for a championship. Sure, they haven't made it to the NBA finals yet, but this team every year with Thibodeau, it was conference finals. Now it's Eastern Conference. Like this team is contending. And that's not the problem. So they don't need a coach to like really rejuvenate a young squad and really show them what it means to be a contender. Because this team knows what it's a contend. They know what it means to be successful in the regular season. They need someone that in those final 5 minutes of a game 6 or a game 5 or even a game 7 is going to have the expertise to say, you know what, guys, this is what we're going to do. And not panic in those moments. And then you also need someone who's been around the league enough to understand the New York media that can really take the heat. Yeah, a young coach isn't going to do that. Maybe they will, but I think you need someone experienced. So the first guy is Mike Malone. And I know that's a top name right now. He had one championship with the Denver Nuggets. He has a 44-36 playoff record. He's been coaching basketball since I've basically been born in 2004. So he's been around for a long, long time. So, and why Mike Malone? Because you look at him, lots of experience. Like I mentioned, he has a championship. The playoff record speaks for itself. He's been in practically 80 playoff games. But he's also a guy that is going to get the most out of his players. We've seen him get the most out of guys like Bruce Brown when he was there, Christian Braun, right? Like the role players who really needed to step up in their moments, Mike Malone pushed them to be able to succeed. And then obviously he's pushed stars like Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, even got the best out of an Aaron Gordon who was playing on practically one knee or one leg, I should say, of that fact. So Mike Malone is my number one candidate. Number two is going to be Mike Brown. And this is actually a guy that I could potentially see the Knicks going in the direction of. Also very similar to Mike Malone, has a pretty lengthy playoff record. He's been 50 and 40 in the playoffs. He has 2 coaches of the year. And it should be important to note that he did take the 2007 Cavs to the finals with LeBron. Granted, it was LeBron, so that's an added fact. There's not a LeBron in the New York Knicks, so it's going to take a little bit more. But once again, he has the experience. And he's also dealt with big media. Right? Like, I mean, he's spent time with Steve Kerr during the dynasty from 2016 to 2022. In that time, he won 3 titles with them. And so he does know what it means to play in those big pressure situations. And he's seen it from both perspectives, right? When he was the coach of the Sacramento Kings, he willed them back to relevancy, had them in the playoffs for 2 back-to-back years. Granted, did it get ended by the Warriors? Yes, it did, but still got to the playoffs. He's handled media. I know maybe his last few years or his last few moments with the Sacramento Kings aren't going to be the ones that he's really going to want to remember when he's calling out, De'Aaron Fox in a post-game conference. But that's not the point. I think Mike Brown and Mike Malone, to me, are the top candidates. And then lastly is Taylor Jenkins. He has a 9-14 playoff record. He really brought the Memphis Grizzlies back to any sort of relevance. And so he's the last name to really round off the candidates that I think. So Mike Malone, Mike Brown, Taylor Jenkins are the 3 guys that I see replacing Tom Thibodeau as the next New York head coach. And if you're joining in, I appreciate you guys joining in here on a Thursday night. I know it's a little bit late. It's 10:33 here on the East Coast. I'm sorry, on the West Coast, I should say. It's 1:33. So if you're tuning in on the East Coast, I really appreciate you because that's some dedication. Like I said, I'm Jude Reynolds Ocanas. This is the Reynolds Sports Report. But before we go, and as much NBA as I've talked, something happened in the NFL today. And I know I haven't really talked so much, but NFL that's my love right there. I mean, I grew up watching the NFL. I'm a huge Cowboy fan. I know. Shame me. I know. Trust me. I go through so much misery that it doesn't even pain me when I get the hate compliments. But we got to talk about Aaron Rodgers, who just today finally got his wait and the anticipation over and signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Aaron Rodgers pisses me off because it really didn't have to be this way. You could have signed, started free agency. We probably still would have talked about it because you're Aaron Rodgers, you're a future Hall of Famer, one-time Super Bowl champ, multiple-time MVP. But you had to do the wait and the anticipation. And you know what? You know what's funny? Like, I think everyone knew he was going to Steelers. We were just waiting for him to put ink to paper. That was it. That was it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the dude that he always makes it dramatic. Oh, I'm going to go into, a retreat for 4 days and then I'm going to figure it out, and then waits another month to actually make his decision. But the decision is over, and so I can't crucify him that much. He's finally landed with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a one-year deal. Now, if you don't know, last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they finished 10-7, made the playoffs. They kind of had that quarterback duo of, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. They lost in the wild card 28-14 to the Ravens. And obviously the Wilson Fields, you thought they were going to keep one of them. They let both of them walk. But Aaron Rodgers, coming off an ACL, actually had a pretty solid 2024, right? He finished 8th in passing yards with 3,897, 28 touchdowns, which was 7th best in the NFL, had 11 interceptions, had a 63 completion percentage, and had attempts from 21 to 30 yards, threw for 1,076 yards, and attempts over 31 yards, he threw for 534. So you can see that he's still slinging the ball. And coming off an ACL injury, you have to admit, it's pretty good. I mean, look, granted, Jets' offensive line is not that great. Their weapons were Garrett Wilson, who was fantastic, but could be kind of inconsistent at times. Then you had Alan Lazard and kind of a hodgepodge of other guys that, at times step up. Obviously, Breece Hall made some impact plays, but he could never really stay healthy. But my question that I'm asking is what to expect from this relationship, right? It's a one-year deal. Aaron Rodgers is clearly coming towards the end of his career. And to be quite frank, I think it's going to be underwhelming. And I don't really know what they're saying the true expectations are for a team like this. But I mean, it's a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers going into an AFC North division that is already so difficult. I mean, look, you have the Ravens, you have the Bengals, and you have the Browns, right? The Browns, they're going to be in a rebuilding type of year. Once again, they're going to be going through their own struggles. But then you have a Steelers team. I'm sorry, you have a Ravens team. I mean, they're looking to go back to a chance to crack back at the Super Bowl. They want to taste it. They haven't tasted it just yet, but they've always been right there. You have a Bengals team that sure their offense is going to be bad, but I mean, they got a star-studded offense, man. You talk about Joe Burrow and you talk about the two outside weapons, the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So you're really putting a lot on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers. And I say that because he's coming into an organization right now that very much favored the run last year, right? When you look at the passing game for the Steelers last year, they were 29th in attempts. They were 27th in yards. They were 20th in touchdowns. And their offense coordinator, Arthur Smith, the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, loves to prioritize the rushing attack. In fact, in the 6 years that he's been coaching in the NFL, he's finished top 10 in rush attempts 4 times. So for what Aaron Rodgers is going to have to do is he's going to have to come here and if they want any chance at winning a Super Bowl, he is going to have to elevate everybody around him. Everyone around him. Now, what I think is going to be, what I think is going to work, let me tell you what I think is going to work, and that is the DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers connection. I think that is going to work because DK Metcalf, we know him as a vertical threat, right? He's going to go down the field. We saw with Russell Wilson, he would have stat lines where he went 3 for 3, 3 receptions, 3 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown. If they can unlock that connection right there, the Steelers are going to win some games. They are going to win some games because Aaron Rodgers on the deep ball, we know he kind of has that just effortless kind of heave that he does, a little flick downfield. And I mean, if he still has the pinpoint accuracy, he has great touch on those deep balls. And in fact, on those sideline throws, he made plenty of beautiful sideline throws this past season to Devontae Adams. And now this is just DK Metcalf, who's not the route runner, but he is that type of vertical threat. But this is where I mean that Aaron Rodgers is going to have to elevate guys. When you look at the rest of this roster, or the rest of this depth chart, you have Robert Woods, who, I mean, pretty much in the twilight of his career. I mean, he's bounced around to so many teams at this point. You got Calvin Austin, who's had some good days, some bad days, like a very inconsistent receiver. And then you still have a lot of unproven on the back end. Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Ben Skoranek, all those guys are kind of journeymen, and they're still very unproven. They haven't really had to be a number one. So when I look at all this, and they got Pat Freiermuth, they got Darnell Washington, both at tight end. When I look at something like this, Aaron Rodgers, if this is what the Steelers want, where it's this is us trying to chase a Super Bowl, right? Like this is us trying to chase a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers is gonna have to play at MVP level, absolutely play at an MVP level, and an MVP level where he's throwing less than 10 interceptions, he's throwing 35 to 40 touchdowns. And he's elevating guys around him. Because, look, I know that DK Metcalf and them are going to work out. I think that's going to work out perfectly fine. It's really going to be the other guys. How is he going to elevate Robert Woods? How is he going to elevate Calvin Austin? Because if he can't do that, the Steelers team is unfortunately going to finish below 500. It's just the truth. And when you look at their schedule, and I can only laugh at this. I can only laugh at this because the schedule makers knew what they were doing. Of course, the Steelers open week 1 versus the New York Jets. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Why would they not open against the New York Jets? But then I look at the rest of the schedule. Look, again, the front half of that schedule is manageable, is very manageable. But I look at those last few weeks, week 11 to week 16. This is their schedule between those 5 weeks. They play Cincinnati at home. Then they go to Chicago. Grant, say what you want about Chicago and Aaron Rodgers' history. And sure, he probably still owns them. But this Chicago team is different. This is not the Aaron Rodgers team. This is not the Chicago Bears that the Aaron Rodgers played for all those years in Green Bay. Then they're at home against Buffalo. Then at Baltimore. Then versus Miami. And then at Detroit. I see maybe 2 wins, 3 wins, 3-3 at best, So I'm saying at the end of the day, I think this Steelers Aaron Rodgers relationship is going to end how every Aaron Rodgers relationships with teams end, right? They're going to hype it up. Oh, they got Aaron Rodgers. Maybe this is the year they could put him over the top. And then it's just going to collapse some way at the end of the day. It's just going to collapse. And then Aaron Rodgers is going to go on the Pat McAfee show, say some wild comment, probably about Mike Tomlin or the players. And it's just going to be a whole cycle. And then hopefully by then Aaron Rodgers retires because you've done all you could do, Aaron Rodgers. Like you've won your Super Bowl. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with the Steelers. And I hate to say it. You're just not. You're not going to win a Super Bowl. This team is not built to win a Super Bowl. The only thing you can bank on, and this is my last thought, and I'll finish up with this. This is the only thing you can bank on, right? Aaron Rodgers has a relatively very good year, right? A very good year, right? Like I'm saying, he's throwing 35 touchdowns, under 10 interceptions. DK Metcalf goes for 1,000. Maybe Robert Woods has a resurgence. Maybe Calvin Austin, really blossoms into a number 2 option. And then your Steelers defense, who's fantastic. I mean, it completely dominates the NFL. That's what you can hope for. That is what you can hope for if you're a Steelers fan. Now, the Steelers, obviously, they added Derek Harmon in the draft. They added Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. So they added to this front 7, who was already dominant. They were 8th in points for, 12th in yards, 1st in turnovers, 1st in fumbles lost. So this defense is dominant. So your best bet is Aaron Rodgers comes in. He does what he needs to do. They drafted Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. He was a great running back in the Big Ten. And you're just hoping that Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy. That's obviously number 1. And he can elevate the guys around him. Those are the 2 things you are going to need from Aaron Rodgers. Because there's not a lot of playmakers on this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. There's not. And so a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers is going to have to play at an MVP level if the Steelers want any chance. I'm saying 9 wins total for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. But that's been the Reynolds Sports Report here on a Thursday night. Once again, I want to thank all the viewers that had tuned in tonight, whether you're watching on the post recording, whether you're watching live right now. I appreciate you guys. It's 10:44 here on the West Coast. I know it's late. You know, you probably want to be watching the show right now, but you're choosing to watch me. And I truly do really appreciate you guys all tuning in. Remember, the Reynolds Sports Report is live on Monday and Thursday. We also have a great selection of shows, Tha Misfits, here on YouTube, on our socials. I'm Jude Ocanas. You can find me at Jude Ocanas on Instagram, on Twitter, even on TikTok. I'm trying to post everywhere, get more content up for you guys, but we're going to be going all summer long. This has been another episode of the Reynolds Sports Report. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and stay tuned for more. We'll be back on Monday.